Hi, my name is Geetaanjalli Lingam. I was born on a Tuesday morning at 9:15 a.m. at a public hospital here in Malaysia to Mr. and Mrs. Lingam. My grandparents and great-grandparents were born in Malaysia, which makes me a fourth generation Malaysian. My Appa side of the family has roots that trace back to South India, while my Amma side of the family has roots that trace back to Sri Lanka, which makes me Indian Sri Lankan by race and Tamil by ethnicity. I grew up in a household surrounded by independent women who are very well educated and financially secure, which has led me to aspire to be the same and more. In some instances, gender roles have been reversed in my immediate family. My Amma was working a full-time job, while my Appa took a freelance work arrangement to take care of my brother and I when we were in primary school. We always were expected to work hard to attain a certain skill, and the expectations set for my brother and I have always been the same. Both my parents come from lower income backgrounds, and I'm very fortunate as we now live an upper middle class family lifestyle. In addition to that, my parents have always ensured that my brother and I got the best education their money could buy. We were given the opportunity to study in an international school, where my peers and instructors came from diverse local and international backgrounds. Furthermore, my elders would always give the importance to the concept of delayed gratification, where they expected me not to indulge, but to exercise restraint towards my immediate desires, while reinforcing that I would be able to reap greater rewards later in life. I still want that iPhone 13 though, it looks really cool. When I was younger, a few of my elders and domestic Indonesian mates who cared for me while my parents were at work used ghost stories to make me scared so that I would not take to certain behaviors or wander off alone away from them. This input of ghostly tales indirectly strengthened my belief in God. I recall that during my primary school years, I used to smear holy ash on my forehead and use a potter, a black dot on my forehead, to protect myself from these ghostly creations and cast away the evil eye. These cultural symbols have defined me since, and I still use them frequently during prayer events and celebrations. Indians pay a lot of importance to cultural rituals, and it's very important in my family circles to acknowledge important milestones in one's life by observing certain specific rituals. Wedding ceremonies, housewarming events, baby naming ceremonies, funeral rites, and ancestral worship are few that are continuously observed within the immediate and extended family. Most of the time, the family observes a vegetarian diet, and a puja is conducted by a priest with the heads of families. These rituals have been immortalized through photo albums and videos in order for future generations to emulate. Despite my upbringing, values, celebrations, and cultural rituals defining me on many levels as Tamilian with Indian origins, I often think of myself as Malaysian first. Much of my behavior today, my topics of interest, my use of verbal and non-verbal communication, my choice of dressing, and my channels of communications tend to slant towards those adopted by young urban Malaysians from very similar age backgrounds. There's nothing very particularly Indian when it comes to these matters, and I tend to behave more like a Malaysian. The lines blur and I become less identified by my race and ethnicity when mixing in peer circles. My favorite topics of conversations tend to surround what's trending on social media: showbiz, activism, mental health, inequality, and freedom of expression. I've always been encouraged to be well versed on issues concerning the community I reside in. I use a mix of verbal as well as non-verbal communication depending on who I'm conversing with. When communicating with older individuals or those in authority, I interrupt less. I stay silent more. I rarely come across as confrontational, and I speak in a moderate tone. In contrast, when I'm in conversation with my peers and immediate family members, I use a lot of non-verbal cues, such as like eye rolling, head tilting, fist raising, and flailing arms. This is according to my mother. I interrupt often and I get overly chatty and gregarious. This contrast in my communication style is also influenced by my culture, as we are taught from a very young age not to be overly expressive in public with people less known to us. Well, within the house, we were not reprimanded to do so. I am not a very confrontational person by nature, and there are about 3 or 4 individuals in my life that I'm comfortable to strike arguments with. My mom, my brother, and my 2 dogs. I always argue with my dogs because sometimes they don't listen to me and I get chewed up sometimes. My mom and my brother are probably the 2 individuals who know me at my best and worst, and I use the least filters when communicating with them. So that's me. That'll be the end for today, and thank you for listening.